and welcome back to CQ, the AWS Certification quiz show, where we're here to help you prep for your next AWS exam. We've had a few requests for more questions on Architect, so I've brought yet another architect to help me today. Marcus, welcome to CQ. Tell us a bit about what you do here at AWS.
Thanks, MJ. Thanks, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depends on where you are. My name is Marcos. I'm a solutions architect here for AWS Sydney. Been 3 years with the company, and I help customers to use our platform, translate their business requirements to technical solutions and service.
Awesome. I didn't realize you've been here 3 years.
3.5, yeah. Time flies.
It does.
Time flies.
Tell us a bit where we're streaming from today.
This amazing place, it's the Amazon River and the Amazon rainforest. So you can quickly realize that's where I come from. This is rainforest in South America, and I'm from Brazil.
Fantastic. It's great to have you here today. So just a reminder, we are once again looking at the Certified Solutions Architect exam, backed by popular request. Mr. Bob, great to have you back online. Thanks for joining us again. Book is available at wiley.com as well as amazon.com. Marcus, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're talking to customers? What's the buzzwords you're hearing right now?
Yeah, so I've been talking a lot about microservices and containers. So a lot of customers, they want to modernize their application and break that big monolithic into microservices so they can be more agile, they can scale according to the number of users they have. So containers, it's something that is part of my week.
Hearing that a lot recently. Maybe we'll get producer John to put a link in the online chat. So viewers at home, please remember, vote along with us with the questions online. I'll be monitoring that for you. And if you do have any questions for myself, Marcus, or producer John, please feel free to put them in the window as well. Okay, Marcus, are you ready to get started with us today?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. First question up. Identity access management.
Right.
Nice, easy one to start, right?
Yeah, it's a good one to start, yeah.
And a bit of a visual for you guys watching at home or at work, so please do take a look at the screen. Who can create objects in an Amazon S3 bucket with this bucket policy?
Right, so we are trying to create objects in an S3 bucket, and we have a bucket policy there. So just a quick recap on what bucket policy is.
That'd be great.
And the ways that you can secure your S3 bucket, because security is very important.
Because normally, obviously, you're talking more about users for IAM, but that's the key here, right?
That's
bucket
the key.
Policy.
Yeah, bucket policy. We also have the IAM policies that you can apply that will be used for accessing S3, but a second one will be the bucket policy.
Perfect.
So several, and you can use both together. So that gives you a lot of security and ways for you to enhance security. So you have to. When these policies are evaluated, they are evaluated together, and you can use a mix of both. So, and one important point here on security is when you create an object, it's by default private. So that's very important. A lot of information we don't want to keep then public. So that's that's one of the best practices on security.
So by default.
By default. And if we come back to the question, we are trying to create an object, and we have that bucket policy. So by default, when you try to add a file there, the bucket policy will be evaluated. And if we check option number 1, which is any IAM user, which is like open to everyone, we can see on the policy that we have a deny there. And that deny and a deny always win. So that means that any IAM user won't be able to access that one.
So deny is always a superior effect?
It is, yeah. When the policies are evaluated, if there is a deny, that deny will win. And we can see on this policy, we can see principal star, that means any user and any account. And you can see that it's for put object. Put objects is the action, and that's the one for creating objects. And we have an explicit deny there. Explicit deny will always win. And that includes the owner of the bucket. That's very important. So even the owner of the bucket won't be able to add a file there because we have explicit deny there. So that's one of the first evaluations that S3 will do. It is if we have an explicit deny, and that's the case. Since we have an explicit deny there, even the owner, which is option number 4, won't be able to store a file there. So no done it.
Okay, so deny is restricted and star is everyone.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I assume you're locking in number 2, but can you quickly just talk us through 3 and 4 for the viewers at home?
Yeah, sure. Number 3 is very interesting because if you imagine admin access, that sounds interesting. It can be a 1.
It does, yeah.
Right? But there is no such admin access permission there. You can create a row, you can create a group, but it does not. It is not there by default.
It doesn't exist.
So
It's a bit of a distractor.
And the number 4 is about the user that created. Specifically because of this explicit deny, even the user won't be able to create an object. So I will lock for number 2, nobody.
Perfect. And on the online poll, Marcus, half went for nobody, but half did go for number 4 as well.
Right.
So let's reveal the answer. Thankfully, you are correct. And thankfully, our policy was written correct on the question as well. All right, let's move on to question number 2. EC2.
Right.
You ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Your account has regional reserved instance for one Amazon Linux M5 2x large instance type. However, you have been running an M5 4x large instance instead. This was the only instance being used in the account. How will the usage of the M5 4x large be charged?
Right.
Oh, bit of a mouthful there.
Yeah. So we have a reserved instance there. We bought a reserved instance, and just a quick
Let's
recap.
take a step back. Talk to us about reserved instances.
So it's an awesome way for you to save money when you have long-term plans to use the platform. So you can get a good discount by telling us, I commit for 1 or 3 years for using this instance size. But what we did here is we bought one instance size. So in this case, 2 extra large.
Yep.
On the M5 family. But for some reason, we had to use a larger instance, which is 6 extra large. How are we going to be charged on this one?
Yeah.
So let's
Interesting
check the options.
question.
Yeah. So charge it at normal on-demand prices. All right. So that means if we select that one, that we are going to pay the full price, on-demand price, and the reservation is not going to be applied.
Okay.
But there is one important point when we are talking about reserved instances. There is the instance flexibility option. And that's very important point. And that applies only if you are using Amazon Linux and Unix.
Which we are, yeah.
Which we are, yeah.
Perfect.
That part is very important. And when we are using regional RI. So both applies. So what that means is that you can use instance flexibility.
Which allows different instance sizes in the same family.
There is a normalization factor there. For the exam, you don't need to memorize the normalization factor, but you can think as a 2 extra large is equivalent of actually 1 4 extra large is equivalent to 2 extra large.
Okay.
So that means that you have half of the 4 extra large covered by the reservation. So the normalization factor will apply there, and then you will have 50% discount on your larger instance.
Okay.
So 50% of the reservation will be applied, and you will pay the 50% of the on-demand. And that means that number 1 is not correct, because there is some discount applied there for reservation. So if we charge it the normal on-demand price, we can remove that one. It's not valid as well.
What about double the normal on-demand price?
Yeah, no, it won't be doubled.
Not a great answer.
Because the normalization and the flexibility is going to apply. Let's say if we had a Windows instance there is no instance flexibility. So
good to
then you would pay more. But that's not the case. So we ticked all boxes that apply for flexibility.
Yep.
In there. So I would go for paying half of the normal on-demand price. That's number 3.
Go for number 3. Yeah. So we got 50% of the poll going for 3 as well. Some did go for number 1.
Number 1. Yeah.
But I think you've explained that quite well.
I would go for number 1 only if we were going to use, for example, Windows in this, because the flexibility wouldn't apply.
Makes sense. Let's check if you're right, shall we?
Let's do it.
Number 3 it is. All right, let's move on to question 3. SQS. You notice that all messages in an Amazon SQS queue are being redirected to the dead letter queue, even though they have been correctly processed by your application. What could be causing this? Marcus, I have no idea. What's a dead letter queue? Please tell me.
Right. Yeah. Let's even talk about SQS as well, because it's an amazing service for you to decouple your application.
I think we've had every guest so far tell us how amazing SQS is.
And
so something's going on here.
I'm really passionate about reliability, and you can achieve a better reliability with SQS because you can send a message to a queue and consume that on demand.
Okay.
That means if your application crashes or is not working correctly, you can consume that on demand. But sometimes the processing of that queue has some issue. It's not successfully processed. Then that's where it goes to the dead letter queue. Because then you can do some troubleshooting, or you can even try to recover the message. So let's say one interesting example is, let's say, a shopping cart.
Yeah.
You are sending a new purchase that you want to do to that queue. But for some reason, the product is not in your catalog anymore. So that means when you are going to process this message, it is going to fail. And then it goes to the dead letter queue, and you can do some troubleshooting.
Okay.
So in this use case, it is saying that all messages on the SQS queue are going to the dead letter queue.
To the dead letter queue,
so something is wrong. It's not part of the message, everything is
and what is it that could be causing this then? Yeah.
So let's start with number one.
Retention period.
Retention. So retention period, I would eliminate this quickly, because if the retention period expires, the message is deleted. It's not going to the letter queue. So I quickly remove that one from the options. Let's go to number two. So max receive count is setting to too low. But one important point there is all messages are going to the dead letter queue. So that means, and they are processed successfully. So that means that the max receive count is reaching, but not because it is too low, because the message was processed.
Okay.
If we go to number three, application is not deleting, and that's very important point. After processing, you need to delete the message from the queue. If you don't do that, the message will come back to the queue, and it is going to be processed again until it reaches the max receive count. So that sounds like a good answer. Yeah. And if we check number 4, which says that that letter queue redrive policy is the configuration of the dead letter queue. It's not activated, but we need that activated. So I would eliminate that as well and go to number 3.
So locking in number 3, we got 80% on the poll agreeing with you, Marcus. So let's reveal. 3 it is. 3 out of 3 so far. Let's move on to question number 4. And producer John has put SQS dead letter queues link in the chat for you.
Thanks, producer John.
From SQS to SNS. What can an Amazon SNS message? When can an Amazon SNS message be deleted after being published to a topic?
Right. It's very interesting to get an SNS question after an SQS because a big difference between them is SQS is pull, so you consume the message, while SNS push message, so it's a fan out method, and you can send several. You can have several consumers like Lambda, you can have HTTP endpoints, email, SMS, and you can have others as well. So SNS, in this case, we send a message and we want to delete the message. So if we, let's say we have several letters and we go to the post office, and then after going to the post office, we want our letters back.
Shouldn't have sent those particular letters.
That's an interesting example. We can use this for SNS as well.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter the consumer that are going to use this. So number 3, which is SQSQ, is the subscriber. Doesn't matter which is using. There is no recall option, which would be number 2.
Okay.
And number 1 is the subscriber hasn't read the message yet, so there is no such option. So number 4, you cannot delete. So as soon as you post it on the post office, it's gone.
Can't jump into that post box and get it back.
As soon as he accepts, it's going to be fun out to every
So nice and simple, and looks like the case online as well. Everyone going
Yeah,
with
good job,
answer
everyone.
4. Revealed answer 4, it is. All right, Marcus, before we move on to question 5, any tips you'd like to give our viewers so far? Yeah.
Yeah, on all the certification tests that I've been to, the AWS ones, there are a lot of distractors. There are some distractors on the answers, and they sound okay. Sometimes you realize, oh, this could be a good answer, but they don't exist. So
no, and we've seen a few of those already,
yeah,
right?
and keep an eye on that one, because it sounds like a good solution, but it does not apply because that feature or that service does not exist.
And we'll pick one out for you guys next time one appears as well.
We
Awesome.
will.
All right, so question 5, logging. A third-party security application is making API calls to your AWS account. However, it is failing to operate correctly and returns a generic access denied message. Where can you look to identify the cause of this error?
So some application is contacting our APIs for doing something on your behalf.
Yes.
And it looks like it's failing. If we check option number 1, CloudWatch logs, sounds interesting, but CloudWatch log is not where the API calls on the AWS API backend.
No, it's logging of apps, right?
Yeah, it's for your apps. So if we go back to containers or applications, that's a very good use case for CloudWatch logs, but that's not specifically for the APIs on the AWS account. So
okay.
API gateway as well does not make sense because that's for proxying connections to the Lambda functions. Policy simulator you can quickly remove because it's not policy simulator that we want to do. We are talking about API calls. So it's CloudTrail. CloudTrail is very important for security.
We had Pierre a couple of weeks ago talking about the importance of
So it's so important that it's enabled by default on new accounts. Old accounts you had to enable that on your AWS account.
But now,
it's by default. And even if you want to enhance security, some customers, they have one separate account and they send these logs to a separate account. So you minimize the blast radius.
So this is our auditing tool.
That's an amazing way for auditing.
Locking in number 4, 100% online.
Yeah, good job,
Beat you
everyone.
to it as well. Oh, good job. I haven't even revealed it yet. All right, but of course it's CloudTrail. Fantastic. Let's move on to question 6, a bit of Lambda.
Oh, wow.
Ready?
Nice. Yeah, let's do it.
Got everything in here today. This is great. All right, your www.example.com domain is pointing to an Amazon EC2 instance.
All right.
How could you keep this operating but send requests for example.com/news to an AWS Lambda function?
All right. So
interesting.
And we can talk about modernizing applications there because
definitely
you have your domain, you have your application, and you want to expand, right? You want to have new functions. And in this case, is the /news. So for creating a /news, and you want to use a Lambda function, right?
Yes.
So for the Lambda function in this use case, before some new releases that we had recently, you would need a different endpoint, like a different domain. But then recently we announced an option on the application load balancer that you can trigger a Lambda function. And that's a fantastic, and I'm giving probably the answer there.
That's all right.
Without specifically creating a different endpoint. So you can have a path-based routing to a Lambda function now on the application load balancer. So it's a fantastic way for you, for example, to improve your application, create new functions there without even touching the main application. So let's say you have a monolithic that is going through a load balancer. And you want to have a new function, a new enhanced or a new functionality, you can use a Lambda function and even using the application load balancer there.
Okay. Let's have a look at the answers then, shall we?
Yeah.
Hopefully we've got there from your brief explanation.
And if we check number 2, the CNAME records on Route 53, CNAME and DNS records, you cannot control a path. No. So you cannot do that using DNS.
Okay.
Send all requests to an AWS Lambda function which can route the request based on the URL. So that's an interesting one because it looks like we are triggering Lambda functions directly, but you need an API gateway to trigger the Lambda function to do the HTTP the HTTPS interaction. CloudFront, it sounds interesting. Yeah, you could have CloudFront there, but the problem is you cannot trigger a Lambda function using CloudFront. You need something in the middle, so it wouldn't be a valid one.
So it wouldn't work on its own?
Yeah, so we need something to trigger this Lambda function, and it is going to be the application load balancer that will send the request to a separate target group, and this target group will be backed by Lambda function.
Perfect. So locking in number one.
Number one, yeah.
100% online as well. I was having a quick check for questions there, so looks like they're all beating me to it. Number one, it is.
Number one.
All right, let's move on to question number 7. S3. I was wondering when S3 was going to pop up. Normally it's question 1 or 2. You are hosting a massively multiplayer online game and want to allow customers to download client software whenever a new version is released. What would be the most cost-effective way to distribute this software?
Right, and that's one of the keywords there, cost-effective. So as soon as you see that keyword, you can have other solutions that may or may not work, but we need to be cost-effective.
Yes.
And that's very important for this. And by the way, one way that I approach the questions on a certification, I usually just read the question first.
Maybe it's time to bring up our
tip of the week.
Special guest tip of the week then. Are you happy to talk us through your personalized tip of the week?
Yeah, that's a personal way that I use when I
go for it.
I usually just read the question first, then I go to the scenario because I can work backwards and have that what the question is asking.
So you don't even read the scenario, you'll go straight to whatever the final question is?
Yeah, I go to the final question, then I go to the scenario. Of course, it depends on how you like to approach. This works well for me.
I like it.
Question and then work
And that's
backwards.
why you picked out the cost-effective being your trigger word straight away.
Yeah, cost-effective there to distribute, so you can get some keywords there, distribute this software, and being cost-effective. So then I can approach this scenario just understanding what the question is asking for.
Okay, so let's have a bit of a look at some of the options here.
Right. So, and by the way, we are using a massive multiplayer game, and
also
we want to
kind
download.
of important.
Yeah, yeah, and we want to download, and this needs to be cost-effective. So
we got a question actually on the online chat for you,
That's
Marcus, from Mr. Bob. Could you take the cloud practitioner exam in your sleep? I think you definitely could.
Why not?
Compliment. All right, so CloudFront price class 100.
So class 100 means, so there are different classes. Class 100 means US and Europe.
Okay,
so,
good to know, yep.
If we talk about CloudFront has several POPs, point of presence around the world that will cache the content for you.
Yep.
It's not only help you on the transfer costs, but also on the user experience because you deliver close to your users. And price class 100 means US and Europe.
So
that can be
like
a good option, but let's check the other ones because there may be a better one.
Okay.
In a cost-effective way, right? Because
that's what we're looking for. But I like number 1. You've got your distribution and you've got your effective.
Right. Yeah. So
your cost effectiveness.
That would work. Maybe we have a one that can be most. That
S3
can be better
auto compression.
That sounds amazing, right? Auto compression. That means we are going to save costs on bandwidth. However, that thing does not exist.
It's a distractor, right? Like you were talking about before.
So it
Perfect
sounds
example.
amazing, but nope, that does not exist. That's an example of the distractor. So eliminate that one.
Great.
So that's wrong. Reduced redundancy, transfer protocol. So there is a reduced redundancy on S3 for a storage class, but not in a transfer protocol. So that
another
does
distractor.
not exist. And that would save you money if you select the storage class on the storage itself, but not on the transfer costs. So I would eliminate that one. And it also does not exist.
Yep.
Transfer acceleration is a good one.
Does exist.
It does exist. You can upload and download close to the end user, to the point of presence. That improves, that will improve the customer experience as well for uploads. but that will be more expensive than
And there it is, more expensive.
That's
okay.
the point.
So it does work, but it doesn't hit the scenario.
Yeah, it works, but more expensive.
Got a bit of a mix on the poll as well, but majority going for number 1, Marcus, which I'm assuming you're locking in as well.
I'm locking in there. Yeah.
Let's do it. Number 1, it is. All right, we're going to get through all 8 questions today, Marcus.
Nice.
Exciting stuff. Last one is on
VPC.
Your face just lit up at VPC. I love this. Okay. You have an Amazon VPC being used only for dev test purposes. The VPC is connected to your data center via AWS Direct Connect. The VPC does not have an internet gateway attached. How can you provide applications running on Amazon EC2 instances with access to Amazon S3 without going via your data center?
Right. So you don't want to go to your data center and then go to the internet.
Yep.
That's the goal. And you can see some distractors there as well. For example, dev and
test.
test.
Oh, straight away. I didn't even look. Okay.
Yeah, dev and test, not on the answers, but on the question. Dev and test, it is there, but doesn't make any difference for.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. When we try to find the answer. So it's very important to keep focus on what the question is asking.
Because it's distractors all over.
Yeah,
Goodness.
So yeah, and we want to deliver the content using an endpoint. And what happens is we don't want to go to the data center, right?
Yeah.
So if we check the number 1, and there is an important point there, which is the internet gateway.
Yes.
So the internet gateway is your door to the internet. So S3 is available in the internet, so internet gateway would be one way that you can access the file.
Okay.
But we don't have one there.
Yep.
And we don't want to use direct connect for that, for coming back.
Perfect. Okay.
If we check answer number 1, direct traffic via secondary ANI, Elastic Network Interface, in another subnet. That sounds like you can do that, but you still don't have an internet gateway. So that means you can do that, but you don't have internet access and it's not going to work.
Okay.
Because of the internet gateway.
Yep.
Use a net gateway to forward requests to Amazon S3. So a net gateway is a way if you have a private subnet to access the internet, because it sits between a public subnet and a private subnet. However, you still need a way to get out to the internet, that door, and that door will be the internet gateway. So a net gateway is not going to work because there is no internet gateway.
Yep, cool.
And answer number 4, it is not possible to access S3 without an internet gateway. Well, and while number 3 says you need an endpoint, so it's one or the other, right?
Yeah.
So it is possible to access S3 without an internet gateway, and the reason is because we provide an endpoint. With the endpoint, you can access S3 directly without going to the internet. So that would be the answer. And you can create an endpoint inside of your private subnet, and you will be able to access the files from there. There are several customer use cases where you don't want internet access. You want to lock that only for your corporate data center or corporate office. So then you can use S3 endpoints.
Perfect. So you are going with number 3.
Number 3, yeah.
100%.
Cool.
This has been too easy today for our guest and you guys online. We need to, Producer John, we need to toughen up the questions next time. Let us reveal the answer. Is indeed number 3, Marcus. So thank you so much for being here today with me. Oh, we got to toughen them up next time. Next time you're on. Everyone online, we are on a break next week, so we'll be back in 2 weeks with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on CQ.
Bye.